Welcome to a new episode of the Coaching Hive podcast with Dr. Mora. I am so excited that you are back with me this week for our really interesting conversation with Coach Imrana. Imrana has been a coach for several years, and I love the way she combines her physical training with her health coaching background and how it all comes together. I love the unique outlook she has, and you can hear her even talk me through some of the challenges that I experience in my own mindset surrounding exercise. So I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed having this conversation with Imrana. I'll go ahead and jump right into the conversation. It was a great one. So I just want to thank you so much for sitting down with me today. It's a pleasure. I know we have worked together in the past, but it's been a while since we've had a chance to reconnect, and I'm excited to hear just a little bit more about what you're doing with health coaching. So would you share just kind of where your journey's taken you recently?
Recently, so I have decided that besides doing the private coaching, so I do fitness coaching as well as the health coaching, and usually most of my clients they want both, and ultimately in real life you kind of need both, right? To be successful. And so, but I find that I also just want to make sure I'm in touch with the community, so I work at a local gym, and then I also kind of just, kind of do like little group sessions as ad hoc as people, want them. If I meet them in a social setting or something, and they're like, oh, okay, you do this? All right, let's, can we kind of get together and do like a short, exercise, group class or something like that.
So when you kind of mentioned people coming up to you in social settings and developing those ad hoc groups, what are they wanting right now?
It's really that social aspect, because they've been missing it. So the one-on-one coaching, many people are still doing it, but there's a whole different group of individuals who are really seeking that group feeling, right? So a lot of people are interested in the group classes, so it's that group of individuals who also, they want to get back into like having group events, and they're missing that.
That's such a double opportunity there, because you get the group kind of aspect of it. You get that social need fulfilled, but you also get to deal with your health and well-being at the same time. So that's perfect, especially as things start to open up a little bit more and we start to move back toward, I guess, a new normal, whatever that kind of is, depending on where you are. But having that opportunity to connect and also at the same time take care of yourself. What a neat chance.
Yeah. I mean, it's even though when you do physical fitness, it's supposed to be a mood lifter, right? Mm-hmm. But it's just not enough anymore, just doing that by yourself. So there's that psychological aspect, right? Psychological and social aspect. So those needs also need to be met in order to kind of boost that mood even more. Yeah.
That makes me think of the wellness wheel with all of the different components of wellness. And really, yes, really, it's
social, there's psychological.
yes, because it's not just about, you're right, it's not just about getting out and walking or biking or swimming or running, whatever it is. It's about all of the other stuff that makes us healthy. It's not just the movement. Yeah.
Having those conversations with individuals, however short they are, in those type of settings. It's just.
So yeah, you were saying it's really nice to have that opportunity, even for those small conversations, even when they're short, they can still be kind of more meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thinking about the fact that you have clients coming and they're saying, okay, I need this group aspect. I need to really incorporate the social side of things again. I need to get healthy. I need to be well. What are some of the things, in addition to typical normal physical fitness, are you finding that they're doing, or that maybe you're talking about in those groups, for just taking care of yourself in terms of self-care. So doing something just for you.
Yeah, so everybody's different. Everybody's life is structured differently. Everyone's at a different phase in life. As we were talking, your kids are younger, mine are much older, and
yeah.
But in the end, I mean, I personally tell clients that you kind of have to catch yourself earlier, prior to you going, right? And kind of be a little bit more preemptive, and say to yourself, ask yourself, so how important is this, right? Like, is something really dire and awful going to happen if I continue to rush for this, whatever this event or thing is, you know? And ultimately, I mean, in my own head, what I use for myself, I'm like, is somebody going to die? Is somebody really going to die? Like, I don't do this thing right now, you know? So I kind of put that out there to clients. And really, it comes down to, you just need to ask yourself soon enough so that then you're not in that frenzy of trying to get something done.
I love that concept. One of the things, I was talking with a colleague not too long ago, and we were talking about how we used to be go, 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 right? And then COVID hit, everything shut down, and we had that opportunity to step back and say, oh, I don't actually need to go to Costco every weekend. Not that I'm speaking from experience or anything, but, you know, really evaluating what do we really need to do and what is just something that we were doing kind of mindlessly. And I wonder, you know, you brought up being preemptive, and I bet now is a great time to really tackle that strategy of being preemptive, because before we get back into the full go, go, go swing of things, now you can actually say, wait a minute, I've gone a year and a half without this. Do I actually need it? Or do I need to go do this? And maybe the answer is no.
Exactly. Maybe the answer is no, and it's okay. So now the next thing I tell people, or recommend to them, is really that after asking yourself that question, it's hard for people to say no to other people, and sometimes even to themselves, you know, and so well, then the next step is you have to give yourself permission. You're allowed to say no. Right? Now, does the word no have to come out of your mouth? You can say no in so many different ways, right? And it can be something as simple as say, let me think about that. Can I get back to you? I really have to look over a few things, you know, my schedule and everything. Can I get back to you? And then when you get back to somebody, you can politely say, well, I had XYZ commitment, right? And you don't necessarily maybe even have to say what the commitment is. The more minimalistic you are, the less you're going to get caught up in talking yourself, or making yourself feel guilty, and then talking yourself back into doing what you were trying to say in the first place, right?
Yes. It's so easy. We have that guilt, right? So we have to release the guilt first and say, no, not everything has to be done. And I don't have to say yes to everything. And yeah, there's a lot of, I've talked myself into things after I've started to say no, and then I try and explain, and then I realize, oh man, maybe I just say yes.
Yeah, because sometimes when you start trying to explain, in your head, you're just thinking, oh my God, this is so lame. Or to this person, maybe they're just thinking this is so sad and pathetic, like, and then guilt, right? Like, oh, I'm saying no to them over this thing, you know?
I know.
But the thing is, you know, if you did some sort of ranking of what's important, right, what's urgent, right, then, but again, it's not focused towards what's important and urgent for someone else. Is it important and urgent for you? Because then that requires your immediate attention, like right now, versus it's important, but it's not urgent. So that's a completely different bucket. And that's where we talk about the whole long-term planning, right? So then, yes, it's important. It is an important thing, but it's not dire that I get it done now. So that means I need to get better at planning for that so that I'm not stuck in this phase of figuring out, oh my God, I got to get it done now. But wait a minute, no, I don't. Because see, you've already made that assessment that that type of situation is in this bucket over here where you need to do it, but not right now. Yeah. So if you've already kind of figured out, parse things out in your head, kind of figured it out, then your decision making is like so quick.
Ooh, so are you a planner?
I am a planner. I am type A to the wazoo. So
What do you kind of do? I mean, I know what works for me, but I'm curious to know what works for you in terms of, you just talked about getting clear on the, I have to do these because they are just kind of life and death. They have to be done. Versus the other stuff that's important, but not so urgent. So how do you go about doing that? Do you have a system?
Oh, that's a good question. Is there really a system? I think it's not a hardline system, right? Everything is fluid. So you still have to keep in mind that even though you put things into certain boxes, right, that those things can always shift. And it just depends on what's happening in your life at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do have to constantly review, re-review, reassess. So really that's what it is. What I like to do, because I'm still old school, even though we have all this technology, and I could go and make task lists and Google that get forgotten. I can make little check boxes in my phone on my notepad that will be forgotten. But if I have a piece of paper that's floating around that I can visibly see, that seems to work the best. Like I'm the most efficient when I write it down.
I'm old school too. I have a paper planner. I do the same thing where I carry around a sticky note that
I pile of sticky notes, yeah. And so many, sometimes I don't want to throw them away. I'm like, something was on there. Did I really finish that? You know, so then I move my sticky notes around on my wall over here. So one, you have to be fluid, right? Life is fluid. Yeah. So even these tasks or goals or mini. So I kind of break it down to like, what's your major goal? What's your mini goal? What's your micro goal? Right? Maybe there's a nano goal underneath.
Some days.
Right? And so as long as you're not going to get so upset at yourself because you didn't finish, the goal, well, then maybe it was too big. So you need to break it down even more to the next step, right? So whatever it may be. So if I give like a fitness example, right? People are like, I need to lose 40 pounds, right? And that's what I did about 4 or 5 years ago. I gained so much weight over a span of years working in corporate, and then I lost the 40 pounds, but it took me about 1.5 to 2 years to do it, right? And now it's just I'm in a flow where I understand the nutrition. I don't really have to weigh things as much anymore because I can eyeball things. I know what a portion size looks like. I know what 100 grams looks like of broccoli or 100 grams of spinach, 100 grams of chicken. I don't really need to weigh these things anymore. But
right.
So as long as you're fluid with everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you're not going to get depressed as much, right? You're going to say, oh, okay, I can only do, this is part one of this task. Really, it's not the whole thing, but at least I moved, I took a walk today. So back to my fitness example. I went off track here. The fitness example is, I need to lose 40 pounds. But wait a minute, so I can't do that overnight. I didn't gain it overnight, right? So then that's the major goal. And then your goal after that would be, like if you break it down, you're like, okay, well, then I need to do some cardio. And I need to maybe fix my nutrition, So that's your micro goal. And then what's your mini goal? It's like, well, okay, maybe I need to do my fitness. I need to break it down to cardio and strength training. And then even further, you can say nano goal. You can be like, well, wait a minute. So maybe I can do my cardio on Monday and Wednesday, and my strength training on Tuesday and Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you can just keep breaking it down, because what kind of cardio are you going to do? How many minutes are you going to do? Right? And let's say you finally decide you're going to do 30 minutes of cardio on Monday and Wednesday, right? And you're like, it doesn't matter what I do, whether it's elliptical, bike, the rope pull, the rope, it doesn't matter. Just, I'm going to do it. You get there, and then you're like, this is the first time you've been back at the gym, and you're like, holy smokes, I can't do this thing for more than 5 minutes. I'm like huffing and puffing and sweating, and that's it. And then, but just say, you know what? I did 5 minutes. So that means that 30 minutes was too much. So you just say, okay, I did 5 minutes. The next time I'm going to do 7. And you just kind of keep just adding on till maybe at the end of the month, then maybe you can do 10 minutes, you can do 15 minutes, you can do 20 minutes or 30 minutes without feeling so much stress and pressure and sweating so much. You'll be able to manage the whole thing a lot better.
Well, and it's less overwhelming. It's less overwhelming when you say, you know what, yeah, maybe my goal was 30 minutes, but today it was 5. And I'm so proud of the fact that I did 5 minutes and I showed up. Exactly. And allowing for that fluidity. I love that concept of fluidity with your goals and with your planning. It's easy to forget that.
Yeah. And the other thing I kind of think about when, you're saying, okay, I'm going to do this, right? And okay, I'm not going to beat myself up if I can't do the 30. I'm going to do whatever I can, right? And let's say that ended up to be the 5 minutes, right? Then persistence. Then you have to still be persistent after that, right? You do have to get yourself back in there and say, I'm aiming for 5 because that's what I finished last time. But if I can do a little bit more, I'm going to take a deep breath and reassess in the middle of doing this cardio. Can I make it to 7? You know what? I feel good at 7. Well, you know what? Maybe I'll see if I can make it another minute. And then next thing you know, maybe you did 10 minutes that day, right? The second time that you went back. So you just have to be persistent, and then you're reassessing in the middle of while you're doing it. And then, yeah, you accomplish something. You should pat yourself on the back. There's nothing wrong with taking small steps.
Small steps are how you get there. That's how you get there. And by doing that, one thing that sticks out for me is you are releasing any kind of guilt you might be assigning to yourself for not hitting that 30-minute target. You're saying, well, I made it to 5 and I kept going when I felt good. Instead of just stopping, I persisted and I did a little bit more. And then I did a little bit more. And that, think about that snowball effect of not just the time you're working out, but the self-efficacy and the self-esteem that pulls out of that experience simply because you've given yourself the chance to take it on your terms versus some societal or even some self-imposed goal that may not be right for you just yet.
Exactly. So the other thing that comes to mind now that we're talking is the internal dialogue. So I talked about reassessing, right? So technically that is that internal dialogue that you're having as and maybe you don't even realize it, right? So again, that goes back to catching yourself having that internal dialogue, right? Or knowing that you're already having some sort of negative internal dialogue where you're trying to talk yourself out of doing something, which is good for you, right? So you're talking yourself out of getting in the car to go to the gym because you are on the couch and you don't want to get up to get changed, right? So so then you're like, well, I'm just going to stay on the couch. Or you didn't even get in the car, let alone the gym, right? So getting the clothes on what was holding you back. And so why didn't you have your clothes on? So then you have to catch yourself sooner next time, right? let's say that was a loss. You just gave in to that count. That was a loss because you didn't catch yourself soon enough. So next time, now you know that's going to be your hang up, and you need to catch yourself with the clothes, so that the clothes are not the issue and the reason anymore why you're not getting in the car.
Yep. I learned that early on. I made a post a couple of years ago, I think at this point. I said, I have my sneakers on. The reason I have my sneakers on is because if I don't put them on, I won't go walk. But if I put them on at the beginning of the day, then it's not an issue of getting changed into my walking clothes. I already have them on. And if I look at my feet and I see my sneakers and I haven't walked, I think, come on, just go walk.
Yeah. Okay, so right there, right? So you're having that internal dialogue where you're like, you're like, come on, just go walk, right? Okay. So this is the other thing I caught myself doing, which was, and maybe I think a lot of people do this, which is the dialogue you're having with yourself internally is you're talking to yourself in a mean, negative way to motivate yourself to go do something good for yourself, right? You're like, oh, come on, what's your problem? Oh, what's the hang up here? You already got this. Give me a break, right? You're talking to yourself like that, right? Versus saying, wow, I did good. I actually got my shoes on for this reason. Okay, I really need to go for this walk. You can do it. I can do it. Let's go. Don't think about it anymore. Stop talking to yourself, Imrana. Just go.
Just go.
Right? And then I would at points I would tell myself, I'm like, don't think about it. Just do. Just don't think about it. Just do. That's it. Stop talking to yourself. Just do it. That's it.
Our words are powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They can certainly talk us out of something pretty quickly.
Yeah. So there were quite a few clients I spoke to about that. I said, your internal dialogue, like if it's negative, you need to flip it around and start talking to yourself a lot more nicely, because in the end, no one else is going to do it for you. Yeah. Right? No one can make you walk, but also no one else is going to come up to you and say, oh, Moira, you got your shoes on. Don't you think you should go for that walk? No one's going to come up and like do that, right? They don't even know you're having to struggle with yourself, right? You do that. You should do that for yourself, right? Like, Moira, you did such a good job, honey. You got your shoes on. Let's go. Come on.
Yep.
We're doing this for ourselves, right? You're talking to yourself in that third person.
I know. Oh my goodness. You're right though. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard it. I can't tell you how many times I've said it to myself. And just shifting that internal dialogue and catching it when it starts. Mm-hmm. But also recognizing that takes time too.
Yes, that takes time. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
To reframe that and to even just notice it as it's happening, because for many of us, when we get to adulthood, it's so ingrained. Mm-hmm. We get so busy that we don't stop and realize what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so going back to what you were asking, like, how do you, being type A, how do you get organized? So we were talking about writing things down, right? Mm-hmm. So when it comes to this, it's like, you have to go back to the beginning, right? Which is, okay, so now I'm talking to myself nicely. I'm catching myself sooner, right? And so I succeeded in doing this task. And now I know that I can do this way. And so in terms of the buckets and the lists that you make, right, you can maybe even break your list down and say, this is a thing, maybe it's not hardcore written down, like, oh, this is the thing I've done before, right? But you know that if you have a piece of paper, you break it up into sections or columns, and you're like, well, this is the one that I've done before, and it's going to be easy for me to get this done, right? This is going to be a little bit more of a challenge, and in this column, that's all brand new to me. And so I may need to go back to figuring out what's a major goal, micro, mini, nano, right? And then like, whoa, okay, this I can do without even thinking, right? Because it's a habit now. This thing, I'm sort of in the middle of still working that out, and this is all brand new, and this is going to take a lot more effort. Right? So you can break your list down that way for even like your daily chores or daily tasks that you want to do. Because again, everything in your life, that's your lifestyle.
Yeah.
and everything needs to have some sort of hierarchy. And I know everybody likes to be number one and at the top, but not everything can be at the top. Because if everything's at the top, you're never going to get anything done, and you're going to basically burn yourself from both ends. And that's what I hear, that a lot of people, you're still stuck in that mode of burning yourself from both ends. Especially, unfortunately, even though I think COVID gave some time and space to you because you didn't have to do maybe the work commute anymore. But because you didn't have to do the work commute, the default was like, oh, well, I'll log into work earlier. And then you would never even get off on time, and you would still be on when you should technically have been commuting or home by then. Right?
Yes.
People were actually working longer hours
in
many situations, a lot of conversations that I heard.
Just having those good boundaries and having a space set aside for your work, and knowing when that time is to be in that workspace, and then walking away, just like you would going home from the office at the end of the day. Yes. My husband and I both work from home. So we have very intentional spaces that are work spaces that we walk away from. And
don't do anything else in that workspace.
Nope. It's our workspace, and that's what it's for. And then we walk away, because otherwise, you're right, it kind of bleeds into every part of your life. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I hope that answers your question about the list.
It did. I love it. I think that's so helpful to think about kind of self-care from catching it in a couple of different ways, to think about that internal dialogue, to think about assessing what buckets things go in, knowing that they might hot buckets from time to time, and breaking it down, keeping it as simple as you can, knowing that you've got to take it step by step in order to make those big leaps forward. You can't do it all overnight.
Right. Yeah, it takes time to build a habit. And I don't know where I had read this, some article probably years ago. And it depends on the habit, but anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months to build a habit.
And I read research recently that it's even longer than 3 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it depends what it is.
Yes. And that was kind of part of it, was if it's a really difficult habit. So if it's something that's not a part of your life at all right now, and it doesn't necessarily slide into something you're already doing, then it takes even longer for it to become a true habit where it's just part of your lifestyle, and it doesn't take as much brain power to say, I'm going to do this right now because this is what my goal is, and this is where it fits. It just fits. Yeah. So it's interesting to think about that it's not an overnight thing by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. And so I'll use one example is with my kids. And I look back on it, I just think it's so funny. I would try to introduce different fruits or food at meal times, right? And the first response, you'll never guess. What was the first response, Moira?
No, ew, gross.
And I'm type A, but I'm also I'm the disciplinarian parent. So it was always like, well, I took the time and effort. I washed it, I cut it, I chopped it up, cooked it, or whatever it was.
Yep.
You're going to take at least 3 bites. Oh, you only took 1, because they'll be like, I'm done. I'm like, no, you only took 1. Like, I spent a lot of time doing this.
I spent a lot of effort on this. 3 bites.
I'm like, 3 bites. And if it was something new, like I'll use avocado as an example. Right? Maybe I started bringing avocado into the house. The response was like, ew, gross. And now, I mean, this is years ago, right? But it did take only about, that one took about 3 months. I have to say that one did take 3 months. Some of the other vegetables or fruits, they only took like 3 weeks, because then basically I would have them every day or every other day, for that length of time, and be like, okay, you have to have the 1 or the 3 slices or whatever it is. Same thing with avocado. Now I make a sandwich and they're like, oh, it doesn't have avocado on it. Where's the avocado? They want the avocado.
Yes.
I'm
Isn't
like,
that so funny?
That you were like, ew, gross, blah, blah, blah. And now you guys can't get enough of it, you know?
It's amazing how that happens and how perspective shifts over time, because it went from the ooh, gross to the, you didn't put it on my sandwich.
Yeah.
It's the end of the world. Where's the avocado?
Yeah. And the example I can give you about exercise is that I have clients who went from, not knowing what to do or just kind of doing a few things and then falling off the wagon, right? And then coming back on and playing this little game, right? To now they can't live without doing their cardio. They can't imagine a few days going by without them trying to move. And whether it be a cardio, strength training, or foam rolling, stretching, it's like they have to do something, because otherwise they start feeling their body reverting back. And even though visibly it may not seem like that to other people or even me as their trainer, but they can feel it, right? So the training that I do with my clients, especially around the physical fitness aspect, it's not, I tell people, so the training you do with me is meant to help you understand and read your body, right? So if and when I'm telling you, yes, you're going to do a squat, but see, you're going to do it in this particular position, this form. You're going to get set up this way. You're going to be standing up tall. You're going to bend your knees slightly. Then you're going to tighten your core, your belly, and your lower back and butt. Then you're going to go into the squat. It's a whole different feeling and effect than if you were just going up and down into this.
Yeah, that's a very different thing.
Yeah, I need you to be aware of which muscles are turning on. And if you weren't feeling your lower back and your belly and your butt turning on, maybe, you weren't getting the most out of it. People are like, oh, I was doing it wrong all these years. I'm like, no. It's not about what was wrong. I mean, that is the way people sit. They get in the chair and they sit and then they get up.
But doing those squats and being very aware of what's happening, I think that also really speaks to self-care in the sense that we have to be more in tune with our bodies and what we're thinking, how we're feeling, and what's happening. Because when we do that, it feels like that's when self-care becomes so much more effective.
Mm-hmm. Right. So in the fitness realm, I use the term you're highly aware, right? Your neuromuscular connection, your mind to body connection, right? And they mentioned this, right? There's mind body yoga. Everything's mind and body, right? Because you have to be able to assess and know, where you're feeling what. Otherwise, you could end up hurting yourself, or you're not getting the most out of that exercise. So that's the physical fitness aspect. But going back to being preemptive and catching yourself early, right? So that's the whole mind, right? If you're not even able to catch your mind, forget about the mind-body connection, right? You have to catch your thoughts. Everybody's thoughts are racing, and so you have to catch your thoughts. So you have to slow down and be able to make assessments, right? And then yes, you'll get to the point where you've done this ABC thing so many times, you already have your assessments, your patterns set up, in the sense that you're like, well, there's option 1, then there's option 2, there's option 3, 4, 5, 6. What works right now? Because I've gone through all of them, and I use each option at a different point or hectic level, busy level of my life. It depends how busy I am, and I will change which option I use to satisfy the completion of whatever that task was. Right? So you've gone through it so many times that it's just rote now. You're just like, oh yeah, it's option 5. I mean, you're not obviously saying it's option 5, but you just automatically start that process and you're content, you're happy because you're like, this is fine. It's absolutely fine that I chose that option, right? Versus, again, go back to the fluidity. If you're still like, no, I have to do this and I have to do it this way, then what's going to be the outcome if you can't do it? You're not able to, you're not getting anything done. You're not getting any aspect of it done. And then you're going to feel bad.
And that's not what we want. We never want to feel bad.
Right. I don't know if it's a human nature to want to feel guilty about something all the time.
I don't know. So when you're kind of thinking about being preemptive, do you have any tips for kind of noticing that? How do you notice, for someone who hasn't really spent a lot of time paying attention to their thoughts or that internal dialogue, do you have any tips for starting that process, making it a little bit easier?
So in the end, there is no shortcut, right? So you do need to give yourself time to reflect, right? So the mind is always rehashing the past, right? So you did something and then it's always rehashing, because it's trying to create a new, as if you did something differently, but so you can't change the past, right? So that's naturally happening anyway. And so if you notice that that's happening, then you should be taking notes, right? Mental notes, like, okay, so I did this, and then, then you'll start noticing what was going on, like the environment, the situation, maybe your schedule was just off and you were just, trying to too much into your calendar. So what led up to that thing not going the way you wanted it to go?
Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you do need to have that downtime, that time to reflect.
Yeah.
And then that's where you will start to identify, oh, okay, I could have done option 1, 2, 3, and you know what? Okay, so I can't think of more than 3 other alternatives that I could have done. So let's just stick with those in my head. And next time this type of situation happens, I've now thought it through, what my responses are going to be to myself, what decision making I'm going to make, right?
Mm-hmm. I just really appreciate you kind of sharing all of those thoughts. I love that concept. I think we started our conversation saying, you need to step back and see what's most important right now and maybe put some of the other things off. And I love how we're kind of ending by saying you need that time for reflection, which means kind of inherently you've got to put some things off to be able to sit down and reflect so that you can keep moving forward. And I love how it's just all kind of connected.
And it's a journey. So this is the thing I say all the time to my clients, that I know people come in and then you have the goal in mind, right? And everyone has a box next to each of the goals, the major, the micro, mini, nano, and however much you want to break it down. And it's like, oh, I got to check that box off. I got to draw that line through that thing, through that task. But it's a journey. So healthy lifestyle, fitness, exercise, right? Stretching, whatever it is that you're doing, your nutrition, it's a journey. There's no end, right? To say, so when people say, oh, so what diet are you on? I'm like, I'm not on a diet.
No.
I don't believe in diets. I don't do them, I just know what to eat, when to eat it, because I've taken the time to reflect, right? And make that nutrition journal, right? Use all that, whatever the apps are that your people can use to track your food, which you do need to do initially, because otherwise you're not gonna be able to learn what your patterns are.
I agree. That has been a huge thing for me, being able to track it just to learn my patterns, even though, yes, I prepare all of my food. Well, that doesn't mean I'm aware in the moment of the portion size, or if I'm eating when I'm not hungry, or how it makes me feel to have a certain food, what I feel like afterward. We don't get that just automatically. We have to be intentional.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me. You had some really interesting points I hadn't necessarily kind of lined up in that way before. And so I just appreciate all of your insights and being willing to share that with me. So I'm wondering, how can we connect with you after the podcast? Social media, what do you have? How can we get in touch with you?
So I have a website, which is www.ikazam.com, and you can send a comment there through the contact. The best way usually nowadays, believe it or not, even though I'm not a tech person, but I do have a business Facebook page, Kazam Coaching, and then my handle for Instagram is the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. So I will link all of those in the show notes so that anyone can just click instead of having to go type that out. I'll make it super easy. And I just want to thank you, Imrana, for sitting down with me today, taking time out of your day and chatting self-care and just kind of hearing your insights about how to make change easier. I think in some ways that may not have been where we started, but I think we got a lot of that in there, and it was lovely to hear your concept of breaking goals down and kind of that fluidity that needs to happen, and really just being very intentional with what we're doing, realizing there's that internal dialogue that we sometimes skip over, but is important. And that reflection piece allows us to access that just a little bit easier. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate you sitting down with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'll leave your guests with 3 mini phrases.
Okay.
So be persistent, be forgiving, and be well.
That's beautiful. I don't think I can add anything to that. That's perfect. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Same here. I appreciate you as well. It's fantastic. I'm so glad I met you in that advanced class that I took quite a few years ago at this point. But
absolutely.
Pleasure staying in touch.
Yeah. What did you think of that conversation? Did you take home something new to think about? Now, let me let you in on a little secret. During this interview, Imrana lost power. Everything turned off, and we were so thankful that this conversation was happening on her phone so that we could just keep going even though the power went out. There were lighting issues. It was one of those moments where you think, wow, anything that can happen did. And what I love most about that is that we still get to have these authentic conversations, even in the middle of lighting issues, power going out. You still get to sit down and have a conversation with someone. What I'd like to encourage you to do this week is think about who you can sit down and have a conversation with. Who can you share your coaching journey with? Who can you share your vision for your coaching journey with? And if you're not sure of the answer of who you could share that with, share it with me. Reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram. Send me a DM. I would love to set up a time to chat. We can take 15 or 20 minutes for a clarity call and start thinking about what your next steps might be in your coaching career. If this sounds interesting, if you are thinking to yourself, this is the exact thing I've been waiting for. I just need someone to talk to about my coaching career and what those next right steps are, then take me up on my offer. Send me a DM. Let me know what you need, where you're at in your coaching career, and we will set up a time to talk. Sometimes just talking to someone can release that perfect next right step. Are you ready? I can't wait to hear from you. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you back here next week for another episode of the Coaching Hive podcast. Thank you so much, my friends.